Hi everyone, hope you're all okay. I'm going to be doing the next chapter in the Goodbye to Guilt book by Gerald G Jampolsky, and today in this chapter he's talking about the ego, and how he says that the ego stands for easing God out. So the ego and its belief system. So Gerald wants us to consider that we invented the ego's belief system of fear and guilt. The ego is a symbol of our belief in separation to the love of God. While the separation from God is clearly impossible through the eyes of the ego, we believe that this is true and that God is out to push us of our guilty deeds. He says that the ego thought system is to hide the memory of God from our awareness by reinforcing our guilt and fear of feelings. It accomplishes this by destroying the reality of love and placing guilt in its place. So the opposite of love is fear, and the ego's existence depends on our continuing belief in the reality of guilt and punishment. So the ego, which is fear and guilt, is versus God, which is the love. Ego's attitude towards God is inconsistent, so at times the ego will view God as some supernatural external being beyond. We comprehend that loves and rewards us if good, and if we are bad, we have sinned. The ego feels threatened by God and continues to do its best to ease God out of our lives. He recommends a book by a lady called Alice Walker, The Colour Purple, where he describes about two women having a discussion about God. One of them says, but it ain't easy trying to do without God. Even if you know he ain't there, trying to do what without him is a sin, is a strain. So I'm going to read that again because obviously that didn't go down too well. But it ain't easy trying to do without God. Even if you know he ain't there, trying to do without him is a strain. Gerald goes on to say that he and many others have gone through life feeling guilty for the wrongs he thinks he's committed. Can you relate to this? Because I know I can, definitely. So yeah, when you feel like you're guilty for doing something and it's against what everybody else's beliefs are and what you think, what you've been led to believe is right, distrusting yourself and others and wondering what way you will get punished. The ego is defined as our lower self, and it is split from our spiritual mind. The thought system is based on guilt, which is our ego, and this system is preoccupied with condemning judgments, attack and defence. And the ego's motto is to seek but never find what you are looking for. The goal of the ego is to control everything and to believe it is right all the time. It uses a lot of energy trying to predict the future. I want you to believe that our body or personality self is the accidental result of the purposeless world. It wants you to believe you are at the mercy of events and situations which we have no control. This is all to do with the ego. It's complex and it's confusion rather than simplicity. The ego works on a pleasure pain, and for most of us it's in the pain area. It believes if you don't fear the past or worry about the future, the world will fall apart. It wants you to think about yourself first, getting and holding on to what you can claim as your own. Jealousy, possessiveness and rejection are at the core of its existence. The ego is certain that it is not God who's the director or the creator of the universe. The ego identification is limited to 5 senses: hearing, seeing, touching, smelling and tasting. It's based on interpretation and evaluation of what these senses feed back to our brain. It's an unlimited identity based on experiences of the past, extending into the present and projected into the future. The ego sees our identity as our body and our personality self. It goes on to identify that he's Gerald Jampolsky, confined and limited to his body, mind and spirit, which are separate from everyone else. Seen through the eyes of the ego, his opinion is dependent on the opinions and judgments of other people about him, as well as the opinions and judgments he has about himself. Can you relate to this? Do you judge? Do you think other people judge you, and do you change your behaviour because them people might judge you, or do you judge yourself? Now, there is actually a poem by Saskia Davis, and it goes like this: to look at me, the great chooser of life. What a funny thing I did. I created me, fancied me up in human package and delivered me to that most peculiar earth plane, which by the way I created too. Now there was I, and what did I do? I played a game, pretended I had no choice, no power, no will, pretended I was weak and separate from all the other parts of me, pretended I depended on weird little circumstances, just custom created for the game I played. And the funniest thing that I did, well, he, ho, ho, he, I pretended I was not pretending. I pretended so intensely, I finally took me seriously. Then on and on I played, forgetting who I really was. Good and bad I often judged, and right and wrong, and mine and thine. Sometimes I made war against myself. There's not enough for me, I'd cry, so give me what is thine. Oh, how serious I grew. It all seemed so very real. No power, no choice, no will, just weak and separate. How exciting I thought it all. The mystery of wondering, it may be, just maybe, even by accident, I could have some little desire of mine, and that great charge of discouragement that came over me as I realised that by all the little rules, well, of course, there was no hope. Oh, woe. And the one great fear I had, how it delights me looking back, it was of giving up that silly game, for then I feared I'd cease to be. I thought, he, ho, ho, he, I thought there'd be no more of me. That's by Saskia Davis. The ego sees truth, whatever the majority of people believe it to be correct at any one time. And from 10 years from when this book was actually wrote, which let's have a look and see if we can work out when the book was wrote. It usually has a date in them, doesn't it? But I'm not sure. No, I can't see, but 10 years before it was actually written. He said that we was led to believe that once people had high blood pressure that they would be on medication for life because it had to be controlled by medication. But then at the time when the book was actually produced, there was a biofeedback technology what came about, which actually made people realise that we can actually control our nervous system and reduce our blood pressure. If we just by reducing our stress and anxiety, what we actually feel, and changing the environments that we're in, and acknowledging and taking responsibility for the position, for the environments we go in. So the recognition allows them to see that their own perception and interpretation of stress and in the environment that caused their disorder in the first place. This shows how changeable the truth can be. That one, we were led to believe that he had to be controlled by medication, but eventually the time came that we could actually change it by just making changes to ourselves. The ego most clearly seen in relationships that we regard particularly close or special. These relationships are based on what we lack something in ourselves, so which only other people can supply with us. So unless we get it from them, we will be incomplete and unhappy. So this is the ego talking, that we are actually led to believe that we need somebody to fulfill us and fulfill that part of us, that we actually need a person to do that. These relationships are built on guilt and lack of trust. The ego believes other people exist to satisfy our needs, so we are unable to see ourselves and others how we really are. The mutual meeting is what the ego calls love. It's important to emphasize this love is always conditional and exclusive. Unconditional love is inclusive and based on total acceptance of oneself and others. So it doesn't matter what they do, you will accept them no matter what. Conditional love is based on qualifications, reservations and limitations. Most of what we call love in our lives is conditional. And this is founded on scarcity of getting and giving to get, and on bargaining and trading. The identifying word in conditional love is if. I will love you if you perform the way I want you to do. If you fit into my mould. I will love you if you get better results at school. If you remember my birthday, I will love you. If you demonstrate more affection, I will love you. If you stop smoking, I will love you. If you lose weight, I will love you. I can identify to the if you stop smoking, because that's one of the things I had about my husband, that I didn't like him smoking. So obviously my love was conditional with him. If the other person changes and gives us what we want or we think we are necessary. So if the other person changes and gives us what we want and what we think is necessary, we feel irritated and frustrated if they're not doing it, and these can then intensify into becoming anger and hatred. Relationships on conditional love are really love-hate relationships. They are based on wanting something from the other person because of a mistaken feeling of scarcity and the belief that the other person has something we lack. In these love-hate relationships, pain, fear and instability, feelings of jealousy, possessiveness and competition on conditional love. Conditional relationships shut others out. It limits on love by serving as a substitute for the inclusive love of God. Now his friend wrote a poem called, well, it's not got a name, but it's about the relationship to conditional love, and it says, to the extent that we want something from someone, to that exact degree we will be in pain, for it is the desire that brings the pain, and it is love that brings joy. So, and then it says, while you feel guilty, your ego is in command, because only the ego can experience guilt. Can you relate to that? I know I can, definitely. That was a bit of a longer chapter than normal. It took me quite a while to write it up and to make notes on it. So what did you make of it? Is your love, are you in conditional love or are you in unconditional love? So are you living your life with the ego, or are you living it in love? I'll leave you with that one, and I will be back tomorrow with another one. See you soon.